PGA Tour CEO Brian Rolapp stood before reporters at TPC River Highlands in Cromwell, Connecticut, on June 23, 2026, and confirmed the most significant structural change in the Tour's modern history. He announced that the boards had approved the Future Competition Committee's recommendation to establish a new competitive model for the PGA Tour that will begin with the 2028 season. The announcement came just ahead of the Travelers' Championship, and it ended more than a year of speculation about how the Tour would respond to pressure from players, sponsors, and the ongoing rivalry with LIV Golf. Instead of one main Tour schedule of events, the new format will feature two distinct series of tournaments, the PGA Tour Championship Series and the PGA Tour Challenger Series. The Challenger Series is designed to offer a pathway toward the elevated events of the Championship Series. The model draws comparison to structures used in other sports, particularly soccer leagues that feature differentiated divisions, promoting top performers and relegating those who underperform. In the official press release, Rolapp described the plan directly. He called it, a new competitive model grounded in meritocracy, with clearer pathways, higher stakes, and more consistency when the best players compete together. That phrase, grounded in meritocracy, became the anchor of the Tour's public messaging in the days that followed. The mechanics of the new system are detailed and represent a fundamental restructuring of how professional golf in America will operate starting in 2028. The PGA Tour boards approved a series of recommendations from the Future Competition Committee, ushering in a new competitive structure featuring two distinct series of tournaments that will debut for the 2028 season. The new schedule includes the PGA Tour Championship Series for the top players in the sport, consisting of roughly 23 to 24 events, while the PGA Tour Challenger Series will serve as a feeder tour with immediate promotion after two Challenger Series wins in a single season. The Championship Series will run from February through August, with fields capped at 120 players, 36 hole cuts, and no alternate list. Membership in the Championship Series will consist of a minimum of 90 players from the prior season's points list and 20 players promoted from the Challenger Series, introducing a true promotion and relegation system. Players who fall out of the top tier will have the opportunity to compete in a Last Chance series consisting of 4 to 6 events in the fall. The Challenger Series itself will feature 20 events with purses of at least $4 million. Critically, PGA Tour players are only allowed to participate in their respective series, there is no crossing over mid-season. The Tour's own official release added further texture to the field sizes and cut structure. The PGA Tour Challenger Series will offer at least 20 events with purses of at least $4 million, as players look to earn coveted promotions, played at distinguished venues that have traditionally hosted PGA Tour events. Challenger Series tournaments will be played concurrently with the Championship Series and will feature fields of approximately 144 players, with 72 holes and a 36-hole cut to the top 65 and ties. Approximately 7 Challenger Series events will be played during Championship Series off weeks, offering increased consequence, benefits, and exposure. Championship Series players will not be eligible to participate in Challenger Series events. The boards also approved a Last Chance series featuring 4 to 6 events in the fall, where a limited number of spots on the Championship Series for the following season will be available as players look to improve or retain their status. The Tour will continue to contest its annual qualifying tournament, or Q-School, to provide access across the entire PGA Tour ecosystem, including the Challenger Series, the Last Chance Series, and developmental pathways. The postseason itself is also being rebuilt from the ground up. The reimagined postseason will involve some version of match play and a rotation of courses, including venues never before visited by the PGA Tour, for the Tour Championship, which has been played at East Lake in Atlanta since 2004. There will also be a regular season champion, crowned ahead of the playoffs. The financial details matter as much as the format itself. The new model effectively creates two tours, expanding the field for the elite tier while cutting prize money roughly in half for the secondary tier. Roughly 15 tournaments are expected to make up the Championship Series, with 20 events forming the Challenger Series, though several specifics were still being finalized at the time of the announcement. Eligibility for the Championship Series will be determined by the top 90 players from the previous year, the top 20 players from the Challenger Series, and other exemption categories tied to tournament winners, injuries, or career milestones. Each tour will maintain separate point standings, and there is no plan for players to move up to the Championship Series mid-season unless they win twice. This is where the first real tension in the story surfaces. Before the announcement was finalized, Rory McIlroy, a five-time major winner ranked among the top players in the world, was openly critical of what the secondary tier might look like. McIlroy referred to the secondary tier as a glorified Korn Ferry event, referencing the tour's developmental circuit, and warned that certain events might lose their elevated status if a sponsor didn't commit roughly $30 million. That skepticism was echoed elsewhere. McIlroy had said earlier in the month that the second-tier events, since named the Challenger Series, would be glorified Korn Ferry Tour events, and he expressed unhappiness at the prospect that the Canadian Open could become a second-tier event. His exact words, as reported, were direct. "I guess, just recency, an event like last week, the Canadian Open, potentially going to one of these Track 2s. Track 2 is a glorified Korn Ferry Tour event," McIlroy said. That statement is significant because it shows genuine friction existed among the sport's biggest stars before the plan was finalized, not fabricated rebellion, but real, on-the-record concern about whether historic tournaments would be devalued under the new hierarchy. The Canadian Open, one of the oldest events in professional golf, faced the very real possibility of being pushed into the lower tier. Once the plan was formally approved, however, McIlroy's public tone shifted toward support. McIlroy, who has become an unofficial spokesman for the PGA Tour since the LIV Golf League emerged in 2022, released a supportive statement on the day of the announcement. "Today's announcement is a positive step for professional golf," McIlroy said in the statement, per Golf Channel. He added, "As more details emerge, it is encouraging to see the PGA Tour reaffirming the importance of meritocracy and creating a structure that will serve both players and fans well into the future." McIlroy also framed the moment in broader terms, saying, "Over the last few years, golf has faced a period of uncertainty and division, which has not been in the best interests of the players, or the fans of the game. Today, we are putting the fans first, and I am excited about the future of our sport." The shift from glorified Korn Ferry event to public endorsement in the span of roughly a month illustrates how contentious the internal negotiations over format details actually were, even among players who ultimately backed the final plan. It is also worth noting that McIlroy's own playing habits are relevant context here. McIlroy has played just 6 standard PGA Tour events this season, and skipped the Travelers' Championship the same week the changes were unveiled. He has made no secret of his desire to reduce his playing schedule as he approaches the age of 40, and turned 37 the month prior. His stated reasoning connects directly to how the new model changes incentives for the sport's top stars. McIlroy has said, "That's what Tiger used to do, he picked and chose what events he wanted to play where he felt like he had the best cadence to his schedule, and where he had the best chance to win. But the thing is, to me, what we've realized over the past 4 or 5 years is the value in professional golf lies more with the platform rather than any individual player, because we are all replaceable. Tiger Woods occupies a central position in this entire process, not as an outside critic but as one of its architects." A swathe of proposals from the Woods-fronted Future Competition Committee were approved by the Tour's various boards, establishing the two-tier system comprising the Championship Series and the Challenger Series. Woods, making his first appearance since finishing a stint at a Swiss rehab facility, spoke at a press conference on the day the new format was unveiled. His direct involvement in shaping the recommendations, rather than reacting to them after the fact, separates this story from any narrative of player revolt. The committee bearing his name is the body that built the framework Rolapp ultimately presented. Scottie Scheffler, the top-ranked player in the world, faces a different kind of adjustment under the new rules. Reporting ahead of the formal announcement flagged one detail in particular that could affect him. One rule change was described as likely to frustrate Scheffler, a regular at events like the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, given uncertainty about how such tournaments would be classified under the new tiers. Reporting at the time indicated the second tier would carry purses between $8 million and $10 million, with promotion and relegation operating between the two levels. The commissioner transition adds another layer to the story. The PGA Tour's two boards, the Policy Board and the Enterprises Board, approved recommendations from the Future Competition Committee, and also approved Brian Rolapp as the Tour's next commissioner, replacing Jay Monahan, effective January 1. This means Rolapp is not simply announcing a new format as an outgoing or incoming executive with limited authority, he is stepping into the top job at the exact moment the sport's entire competitive structure is being rewritten. Rolapp addressed the broader philosophy behind the change in a letter to fans published alongside the announcement. Today marks a pivotal moment for the PGA Tour as we move forward with a new competitive system, starting in the 2028 season, he wrote. Throughout this process, we have listened closely to players, partners, and our fans. You told us you wanted to see the best players in the world competing against one another more often. You wanted clearer stakes as the season unfolds. And you wanted a more dramatic finish to the season that rewards excellence and makes every tournament matter. This new model is our response. One tour. Two compelling series of events, played at the most worthy courses, for the highest stakes, culminating in a true postseason that crowns the best golfer in the world. In a separate statement tied to the Future Competition Committee's process, Rolapp emphasized the collaborative nature of the plan's development. From day one, the focus of the Future Competition Committee has been to build the best version of the PGA Tour, and to do so in a way that reflects the voice of our players and the expectations of our fans, said Rolapp, who added that both series names were working titles. The result is a new competitive model grounded in meritocracy, with clearer pathways, higher stakes, and more consistency when the best players compete together. This model positions the PGA Tour for the future, and our focus now shifts to finalizing the details and preparing for implementation, Rolapp said. Rolapp also spoke about the underlying value system driving the entire restructuring, framing it as a return to first principles rather than a break from tradition. Golf has an amazing tradition of meritocracy, probably the best sport in the world, Rolapp said. You earn what you earn and you do it inside the ropes and you're rewarded for it, and our athletes are conditioned that way. I think we got away from that. The Championship Series, debuting in 2028, is going back to larger fields with 36-hole cuts, and there won't be sponsor exemptions, alternate lists, or Monday qualifying. This last point represents a direct reversal of the signature events era that defined the PGA Tour's response to LIV golf beginning in 2023. The changes will bring an end to the controversial signature event model, which had seen the Tour's top stars playing small field, no-cut events. That model was widely criticized for reducing access for rank-and-file Tour players and for insulating top stars from the risk of missing cuts. The new Championship Series structure, with its 120-player fields and mandatory 36-hole cuts, is designed to restore competitive risk for even the sport's biggest names. The scheduling puzzle remains only partially solved. There are around 15 tournaments set to make up the 2028 Championship Series, with the composition still to be finalized. The regular season is expected to include about 15 events once the four majors, the Players' Championship, and the playoffs are removed from the count. Rolapp has also targeted Philadelphia as a key market for future expansion. Possible new markets under consideration extend well beyond Philadelphia. Potential new markets for PGA Tour events in 2028 include Boston, Denver, New York, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Seattle, and Washington, D.C., with iconic courses like Medina and Congressional being considered. That list signals an intent to move away from some of the Tour's traditional smaller market stops and toward major metropolitan areas with larger television audiences and corporate sponsorship bases. Not every historic tournament is guaranteed a place in the top tier. Rolapp indicated that 10 events had already been agreed upon for the Championship Series, though which ones remained unclear at the time. The Charles Schwab Challenge at Colonial, the longest-running PGA Tour event held at the same course, faces doubts about making the top tier according to local reports. That detail alone underscores the stakes involved for tournament directors and title sponsors nationwide. Decades of tradition do not guarantee championship series status under the new meritocracy-based model. One event has already secured its place. The Travelers Championship became the first tournament formally named to the PGA Tour's new Championship Series beginning in 2028. The Championship Series will replace the existing Elevated and Signature Events model entirely, while the Challenger Series runs concurrently as its feeder system. Those Championship Series events will include the four majors, the Players' Championship, the Postseason, and the Ryder Cup and President's Cup, leaving roughly 15 events to be filled in on the schedule. The PGA Tour is expected to announce the full 2028 slate later, and while the boards approved a framework, the details are still being finalized ahead of a 2027 deadline. Other highlights of the proposed 2028 schedule include the reinvented postseason with match play and rotating Tour Championship venues, a fall international series, and the end of sponsor exemptions altogether. Among the courses and events likely to be included in the Championship Series are Torrey Pines, the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and the Arnold Palmer Invitational. These are among the Tour's most historically significant stops, and their likely inclusion signals that the Championship Series is being built around a mix of tradition and market size rather than one factor alone. The broader competitive landscape gives this restructuring added weight. The announcement followed a year of discussion and debate over how the organization could create a format that pleases all parties, players, sponsors, hosts, and fans. Both series will feature 20-plus events, though the similarities largely stop there, particularly when it comes to purse sizes. The relationship between this restructuring and the rival LIV Golf League adds a further dimension. A separate strand of reporting tied to this period of golf's realignment noted a related development: negotiations between the tours over player pathways and world ranking points. Rory McIlroy reacted to a related PGA Tour development via the X platform, stressing that it would be positive for everyone, writing, "Positive news, and great to see the respective tours working together for the good of international golf." For LIV Golf and its CEO, Scott O'Neill, the related news came as a complete surprise, since LIV stood to lose ground tied to official world golf ranking points and its own promotion and relegation system. That reaction from LIV's side highlights how the PGA Tour's restructuring is not happening in isolation. Every adjustment to promotion, relegation, and eligibility inside the PGA Tour has downstream consequences for how LIV golf players might eventually re-enter the ranking system or seek pathways back into mainstream competitive golf. Reaction across the sport has been layered rather than uniform. Some players expressed early skepticism about specific mechanics, particularly the fate of historic, mid-tier events like the Canadian Open, before ultimately supporting the finished framework once details were clarified. Others, including Scheffler, face open questions about how their current playing patterns fit inside the new tier structure. And the Tour's own boards, composed of both player representatives and independent directors, approved the plan only after a year-long review process led by the Future Competition Committee that Tiger Woods helped front. What emerges from the full record is a picture of a sport in the middle of an unusually candid, and at times contentious, negotiation over its own identity, carried out largely in public, through statements, social media posts, and press conferences, rather than behind closed doors. The 2028 launch date gives the Tour roughly a year and a half from the date of the announcement to finalize scheduling details, confirm which tournaments earn Championship Series status, and determine exactly how the promotion and relegation mechanics will function in practice. The stakes of that unfinished work are considerable. Purses in the Challenger Series will run at roughly half the level of the top tier. Historic clubs and title sponsors face the real possibility of losing elite status. And the sport's biggest stars, from McIlroy to Scheffler to Woods, are now operating under a structure explicitly designed to strip away the exemptions and safety nets that defined professional golf for the better part of the last decade.